this is the thing, is you have to kind of understand the context of the customer. So this is a really long roundabout way of saying simplicity, I think, for service providers comes down to being buyable, right? It doesn't necessarily come down to only having a few options, but I do think that buyability is the productization, but then it's also having that like one unifying idea. What makes you different? And truly what makes you different, not just we're people-centered, we're innovative, we're digital first. I mean, you've got to kind of dig a little bit different or a little bit deeper to be more distinct in the marketplace because you want to get into that buyer's minds.
Welcome to the Agents of Change, the podcast experience you've been waiting for your entire marketing career. Search, social, mobile, AI, blockchain, and neuromarketing. These are the Agents of Change, and so are you. Digital marketing success awaits, and your transformation begins now.
Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Podcast. The podcast is all about helping you reach and engage more of your ideal customers online. My name is Rich Brooks. I'm your host. This is episode 530, powered by the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Summit, coming this April 24th through 26th, 2024. Hey, thanks for choosing to tune into this week's episode. Choice being the operative word. Because you had a choice whether to listen to this episode or skip it, to subscribe to this podcast or not. Hopefully, we made it easy enough for you to make the choice that was right for your digital marketing growth. And that's at the heart of what we're going to be talking about today. Choice hacking. How we can organize and position our offerings so that it's easier for our prospects to make the best choice possible, which is obviously to go with us, right? To buy from us, to choose us. Understanding choice hacking and putting it into action in your marketing and on your website can make all the difference to your growth and your success. Before we get to that, I want to suggest another choice for you to make. To attend our first ever Agents of Change Digital Marketing Summit. And to make this the easiest choice you made all day, heck, all week, I'm going to let you in on just a little secret. It's completely free to attend. This April 24th through 26th, we've got 30 of today's best marketers sharing their proven strategies and tactics to help you grow, to grow professionally and to grow your business. We've got John Lee Dumas talking about the common path to uncommon success. We've got Kim Garst showing you how to create amazing content in less time with AI. We've got AJ Wilcox sharing how to use LinkedIn ads in ways you probably didn't know existed. We've got Dana Malstaff showing you the type of content that your audience wants to share, plus 24 other sessions covering the customer journey, Facebook ads, vertical video, social media strategy, SEO, analytics, and a whole lot more. This is the event for anyone interested in generating more business online, and you can attend for free. Just visit theagentsofchange.com and reserve your space now. There are also some amazing VIP packages if you're really serious about growth and want to gain even more access to these speakers and their courses, masterclasses, and software. All that information is available on the website. Don't miss out on this event. It is going to be amazing. Now, we couldn't offer this summit for free unless we had the support of some amazing sponsors, including ActiveCampaign, MarketMuse, Bear Value, and of course, my own company, Flight New Media. But today, I want to shine the light on one of our gold level sponsors, Email Tool Tester, an amazing resource for marketers and business owners. You know that email marketing continues to be a cornerstone of all successful campaigns, but unlocking the potential of email marketing means steering clear of common pitfalls. At Email Tool Tester, you'll find more than just a review site. You'll find experts ready to equip businesses of all sizes with the tools and expertise they need to take their marketing to the next level. With 15 years of industry experience, they're not only here to assist you, but also to ensure your journey to success is guided and supported every step of the way. To discover their unbiased reviews of the leading newsletter tools, detailed guides on lead generation, deliverability best practices, and free downloadable resources, head on over to emailtooltester.com, and I'll put that link in the show notes as well. And now, on with the show. A recognized authority in applying behavioral science to marketing and customer experience, my guest today has worked with brands like AT&T, McDonald's, Adidas, and Starbucks, and is now the founder and managing director of customer experience consultancy, Choice Hacking. She hosts the popular behavioral science podcast, also called Choice Hacking, which you can find on all major streaming platforms. She's also the author of several books available on Amazon and her website, choicehacking.com. Today, we're going to be learning more about choice hacking and its impact on customer experience and your business with Jen Clinehens. Jen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Rich, for having me.
So I'm always curious about this. What was the incident or moment in time that got you to create your business, Choice Hacking?
That's a great question. And actually, I think what it really came down to, because I started Choice Hacking as the side gig when I was working in ad agencies, was using and applying behavioral science to customer experience and marketing and going to talk to these clients who kind of knew what behavioral science and marketing psychology were, but they didn't really understand it. And up until that point, a lot of people who were like academics or very, very smart people, but not necessarily the best communicators for people who are not like in a consumer psychology field or with that type of background, they had basically confused the clients. And to be completely frank, I was confusing the clients a little bit too. So I decided I would start a blog and I would kind of act as a translator between these really brilliant academics, studies, all of their findings, and I would kind of sit in the middle and translate it for CMOs, CEOs, and people who they thought it was interesting, behavioral science, but they didn't really understand how it could apply to them. So it started as a blog and it just kind of grew from there.
I love it. I love it. Now, when you're at your next cocktail party and somebody corners you and says, how do you define choice hacking? What's your go-to answer for that?
Yeah. So choice hacking, essentially, we believe that businesses win when they know what makes buyers tick. So that's what we do. Any kind of service kind of in between those two things. So I guess the elevator pitch is we do courses, coaching, and consulting to help businesses figure out how buyers tick.
All right. And it's all based on this idea of choice hacking, lowercase choice hacking. How does it impact the customer experience? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, gosh. I mean, in a million different ways. I mean, the way that I like to talk about behavioral science and marketing psychology to people who are maybe new to it or kind of understand it or nibble around the edges is it's essentially a lens, right? It's a lens through which you look at marketing and customer experience. My background, like the first industry that I was in, once I left classical music and came into marketing and business, was as a marketer. So I did digital marketing, I did innovation when I was at AT&T. I did digital customer experience, I did retail experience when I worked with McDonald's and Adidas and a bunch of these other kind of companies. And I did omni-channel experience. So I've worked on everything from, as we would say, like TVCs, so television commercials, all the way down to how do we actually design a product page? What price should this be? So you can think of it from like the big top of the funnel all the way down to the little bottom of the funnel, if you want to talk about funnels. And really what it does is it kind of gets you into the head of the customer or becoming an advocate for the customer, but almost like you can see backstage as well as front stage. So you can see what people are doing, you can observe it, and then you can look at behavioral science and psychology and try to explain it. People are doing X. We think it's because of loss aversion or scarcity or the peak end rule, things like that. And then we can use that to change customer behavior. Now, with that comes things like, how do we capture people's attention? So I do a lot of salience analysis is what it's called, using like predictive AI tools that I've used for 7 or 8 years now to, for example, look at a poster in a restaurant and say, are people understanding that we want to sell them this particular item for this particular price? Use the salience AI and it can tell us that people are completely missing the price and they're looking directly at the logo or whatever it might be. It can help us figure out like how to create memories. So how do we wear a groove in somebody's brain so that a new product or a new brand becomes something that when it's time for them to choose something in that category, if it was Coca-Cola, for example, I'm thirsty, I want a soda, who am I going to pick? Well, that's why Coca-Cola spends billions and billions of dollars being sort of a steady drip in the background of everybody's life, right? So that when it comes time for you to say, I'm thirsty, I want a soda, and you walk into a gas station or wherever, you go straight for Coke. So building memory structures, attention, I mean, thinking about things like emotion, and then also kind of down to what I think most people know or what most people think of when they think of behavioral economics or behavioral science, which would be things like nudging. So designing how choices are presented to people to increase the chances they're going to make one decision or the other.
Now, Jen, you referenced Coca-Cola, millions or billions of dollars that they spend on these things. You've worked with AT&T, McDonald's, and Adidas. These are all giant corporations, and I'm sure there's a lot of small to medium-sized business owners listening in who are like, well, that's great for them, but I can't imagine how I could actually do some of this. So what if we are a small to medium-sized business and we want to start leveraging some of this choice hacking? What's a good place to start? How do your clients, your smaller clients, maybe get started with this whole process?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good of you to mention that too, because we really do work with businesses of all sizes. And we tend to, occasionally we do work with startups who are creating a product, for example, but usually it's somewhere between, hey, we've just started, we've just kind of turned a profit, to even, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in revenue, because the principles are the same, right? It doesn't really matter. I'll put a little asterisk next to that. It kind of doesn't matter what size your business is. So for example, if you're a smaller brand, let's say between 1 and 5 million in annual revenue, you are going to have sort of a different set of challenges, a different set of behavioral challenges, memory challenges, attention challenges than McDonald's. You know what I mean? And there's a reason for that, because it's more about, with those big brands, about preserving the brand. It's about expressing the brand. It's about limiting choice. But I think the number one place that any business can start to make improvements based on behavioral science and psychology is to think about things like simplicity. How simple is your experience? How simple is it to interact with you? How many messages are you trying to tell your customers? Are you trying to tell them 15 different things in 15 different places? Because every business has that problem. And that problem is only exacerbated the bigger the company gets. The more countries it's in, the more places you can go, the more types of stores or restaurants you could go into. And in some ways, when you're a smaller business, it's actually, I don't want to say easier, because simplicity, even though it's very effective, is not easy. And the reason for that being, there's some psychology behind it, right? You make something, it's something called the endowment effect, right? I helped create this. I worked with a marketer. I made it myself in a smaller business. I created this ad. And now you're going to tell me that I have 10 marketing messages and I need to have one? Well, I like those other 9. I made those. Those are really good. So, simplicity, like I said, it's very helpful. We know from all of the science, a thing called simplicity theory, that customers actually will prefer and will choose a company that has a simpler experience, where it's easier to make a decision. They don't feel like they're being overloaded by options and all of that. But again, I mean, you sort of have to fight this. Either I own this as the entrepreneur, or we're a small team and we came up with it, or, hey, part of my job is coming up with 25 different ads a year, and you're going to tell me I should only be doing 5. Does that mean they're not going to want me around anymore? So there's a lot of emotions tied up in this idea of simplification. But to me, that's the number one place where every business needs to spend some time and attention.
I love that. And so I'm just selfishly thinking about myself, as we often do, and running a digital agency. And so we have all these different offers: websites, branding, SEO, paid search, organic, all these sort of things going on, social media. And we offer them all. And I have experts on all of them. But with the idea of simplicity, how might a business like mine simplify either the messaging to our ideal customer, or make it easier for them to engage with us, where maybe we might have a deeper, more nuanced conversation? What are some things that we could do online or off that might help with that?
Yeah, I can tell you the number one thing that I've seen in big ad agencies, small ad agencies in my consultancy, is productization. So productization is something that a lot of agencies really bulk against, right? Because they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't just boil down what we do into a menu of things that clients can choose from. That doesn't work. But when it comes to actual buying of services and searching for services, I mean, it's just to step back a second. So there's this principle of category entry points. I did not come up with this. A very smart person named Jenny Romaniuk, I believe is how you say her last name, with the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, writes a lot about this when it comes to B2B marketing. And it's just like the example with Coca-Cola. I'm thirsty. I want a soda. Oh, I'll pick a Coke. It's the same thing with an agency. You have to ask yourself, what is a CEO or a CMO sitting around and asking themselves, right? Are they banging on a table and going, get me a behavioral science consultancy? Very few of them are doing that, which is why choice hacking is not a behavioral science consultancy. We use behavioral science, but we are not a behavioral science consultancy because two people have banged on a table and asked for a behavioral science consultancy. And those people called Rory Sutherland, who is a very famous behavioral science guy.
Love him. Yeah.
They're not calling me, right?
Right.
So you have to kind of pick your battles, but you have to think about what is that buying occasion, right? And if you create products and you create content and you create searchability around certain problems that you know that these CMOs and CEOs of these target companies that you want to work with have, they will find you. They will see, oh my God, this person has a solution for exactly what my problem is. And then you can create the relationship and start to figure out, oh, well, we've productized it as this, but you're a giant multinational corporation. Maybe you need this plus that, or you're a smaller business. So maybe you need this minus that. But it gives people a place, I think, to kind of grab onto and have something to chew. And this kind of goes into this whole idea of like mental availability, which I'm sure, you know quite a bit about, but the idea of like, does a company come to mind when you have a problem? And it just becomes so much easier, I think, when you make the actual choice or the actual buying decision simpler. And yes, that might mean that you still have like a ton of things to choose from. And in fact, I think this advice, I've just given it, that simplicity is really important. It is, but there's a whole thing about the choice paradox, right? Like too many choices make us upset. Smaller number of choices is good. That's actually not as nuanced as it should be. Right. So a lot of choices can do a job for certain types of companies. If you went on Amazon.com and they had 15 products in 3 different colors, Jeff Bezos would not be the richest guy on the planet. Right. In a retail environment like that, a lot of trust, a lot of options, knowing you can do a lot of things actually attracts people to you. I can trust a retail company. I can trust a Walmart because they've got, a million items on the shelf. Of course I can trust Walmart. But then when it comes time to like picking cereal, if there's 25 different types of cereal, it's going to be harder for me to pick cereal. Right. So simplicity in choice, it matters what kind of brand you are, how mature you are, what you're selling, who the customer is. So if you have a customer, for example, who's kind of going through their day-to-day and they're overwhelmed with information, that could be somebody like a CEO or a CMO. And that could also be someone who's living below the poverty line. That person has a lot of decisions they have to make every day. That person has a lot of trade-offs they have to make every day. And some studies of people who are kind of living in that socioeconomic environment basically show that their brains are exhausted all the time because you have $20 in your pocket, maybe $10, right? So you've got to decide where that $10 goes. Does it go to buy you lunch? Does it go to buy you groceries? Does it go to pay for your kids' school lunch debt? So, I mean, this is the thing is you have to kind of understand the context of the customer. So this is a really long roundabout way of saying simplicity, I think, for service providers comes down to being buyable, right? It doesn't necessarily come down to only having a few options, but I do think that buyability is the productization, but then it's also having that like one unifying idea. What makes you different? And truly what makes you different, not just we're people-centered, we're innovative, we're digital first. I mean, you've got to kind of dig a little bit different or a little bit deeper to be more distinct in the marketplace because you want to get into that buyer's mind. So they bang on the table and go, I need a digital agency because my email marketing is broken. Oh, I remember I should call this consultancy because they're a little bit different. They stick out in my mind. I saw a lot of content that they put out. I see them in my LinkedIn feed every day. These kind of things. So it's a nuanced, I guess, answer to a complicated answer to a simple question. But that's sort of the nature of, I guess why we have behavioral science and psychology experts to help us translate all of this.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking about some of the businesses that we worked with in the past and some of the websites that I see on a daily basis. And it's this constant battle for what information goes on the homepage and how to organize that. Can any of the lessons from choice hacking or behavioral observations give us some sense of what should go on the homepage or how do we get people to the right part of our website if they are coming in through the front door?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, personalization is the ideal situation, right? If you can tell, I think I have some examples in Choice Hacking the book, but I also have some examples on the blog and some articles around, especially digital companies being able to say, hey, I noticed that you're visiting me from blah. I actually they're going to remain nameless because I don't know if this is still legal at this point. When I visited their website, I was on the campus of a big company, right? So you would think like IP addresses and things. And they said, hey, we think you're visiting us from big company. Is that true? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then it kind of reworked the website to show me things that would be
Wow.
relevant to this big company. And I thought, first of all, that's brilliant. That's really smart. Second of all, it's a little scary. I'm not quite sure how this is if this is legal. I hope it is. And third of all, is like, what a brilliant way to take a lot of information and make it a little bit more personal to me. And obviously with things like account-based marketing, all that, like you can send out emails to people at certain companies that talk about certain things. But in an ideal world, the answer to that is personalization. We don't live in an ideal world, however. So when I've worked with choice hacking clients, for example, I worked with a SaaS startup in the innovation and IP space, and they had two different products and therefore two different sets of customers. And their website, when you landed on it before I worked with them, was a very kind of like general thing that said something like innovation is important, patents are important. And I'm like, if I'm one of these target groups of people, this message is not suiting me one way or the other, right? It doesn't tell me anything. And I think that's what you see in a lot of like SaaS or agencies where you just get this kind of, we're people first. We like customers, like whatever this kind of like milk toast means nothing, doesn't really say anything to anybody phrase will go on the homepage. And then it's up to you to kind of scroll around and go see the work or whatever it might be. But what we did when I worked with them was basically say, okay, you've got these two ideal customers. Let's just do an A/B test. We'll test the homepage you have now. And then let's test a homepage that says something like, we do IP. And you can go here or you can go there, right? We have this tool for you if you're this person. We have this tool for you if you're that person. And what happens? And obviously their measure of success was book calls. And they saw an immediate change. I mean, even though I think most UX designers would look at that and go like, oh my God, that's a nightmare. Behaviorally, if you look at like what people do when they get to a website, they're kind of hunting for information that's pertinent to them. And we knew that customers were doing that. So we just kind of designed an experiment to see, will they respond to that? Now, will we test into some evolutions of that? Probably. But it's literally just from the idea of people land on the homepage rather than wasting their time with something that doesn't really meet anyone's needs. Let's break it into two and say, if you want this, go here. Or if you're this person, go there. And then very quickly kind of got them where they needed to go.
And then had those one-on-one conversations on deeper pages. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of the things as I was looking at your own website, you talk about customer journeys, which is always a fascinating topic for me, and using choice hacking to kind of create a customer journey map. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I have been using behavioral science along with customer journey maps, I think for like 6 or 7 years now. Somebody posted something on LinkedIn, I don't know, like last year, and they said, has anybody ever thought of using behavioral science and customer journey maps together? And I was like, wait a minute, nobody's doing that? I just assumed everyone was doing that. It just seemed very natural to me to do that. But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in customer journey maps. I would say for almost every company, especially if you don't have one, or you're kind of getting to the point where things are getting complicated, you're kind of juggling things, to use kind of the digital verbiage, your funnel is leaking. It's kind of an evocative term, but you've got this like process that people are going through and they're falling off and you're not sure why. A customer journey map is a great way to basically get under the skin of your buyer. What are they doing? What do they need? What are they experiencing now? And what's wild is it doesn't matter what size your organization is, whether you're one person this happens to me, whether you're one person with a website or there's 30,000 people in your organization, very few people go through the customer experience themselves. And so if you do that in the process of making a customer journey map, a lot of people are just shocked by what happens. They're like, wait a minute, we do that and then we do that? That doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't, but everyone's so stuck into their jobs that they just forget, hey, I need to experience this like a person experiencing this for the first time. So I think customer journey maps are really good at that. To me, the thing that is sort of the secret sauce of a customer journey map is the emotional journey. And we know from behavioral science, there is a psychological or behavioral science rule, quote unquote, called the peak end rule. And a very smart man named Daniel Kahneman, who you might have heard his name, Nobel Prize winner, wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, came up with this in a research study about colonoscopies of all things. Huh. And basically the thinking was when you have an experience, like deciding whether that experience is good or bad is like this average of every moment, right? So we study colonoscopies because I obviously don't know myself, but apparently there's pain involved in a colonoscopy, and it can peak and it can end and it can do all these things. So going into, this experiment thinking, oh, when people say something was good or bad or painful or not painful, they're kind of averaging everything out. But what they found was that people were determining whether something was painful or how to remember it, if it was good or bad, based off of the emotional peak, right? So the pain peak in the experiment with the colonoscopies and the ending. So if the peak of the pain was at a 10 and the ending was at an 8, but then the rest of it was at like a 0, that person was like, oh my God, that was painful and terrible and I hated it, as opposed to the person who, maybe kind of averaged out at like a 5, right? Like, it's interesting, right? To kind of look at this and say, if we take the emotional journey from the customer journey map and we think about the peak end rule and we figure out what are the most emotional moments, that could be a high or a low. And then we think about the ending, which could be different for different types of customers.
Right.
So yeah, it helps you prioritize your marketing budget. It helps you figure out those moments that punch above their weight. So you can start to concentrate on things that really matter, which is, if you're in a smaller company, that really matters. I mean, it matters in any size company, but if you only have so much time, so much attention, you can't hire anybody, you can't find any more money. It just is what it is. You have to concentrate on those moments and make the biggest difference. And so that's why I think customer journey map is so great, because it really helps you cut to the chase of like, what's really going to make a difference for customers? What's going to move the needle for our business?
So Jen, with that idea of the peak end rule, so if I have a customer process and intake process, and we know that one element of it is especially difficult, like creating content, if the client's responsible for creating content or whatever it may be.
Right.
Do I spend all of my time trying to minimize that aspect of it, or do I spend time adding more pleasurable experiences towards the end of it so that's what they remember?
I mean, if it were me, I would fix everything that's broken first. Anything that's painful in those emotional moments, those most intense emotional moments, fix those first. The ending is important, but I think what happens is you get a lot of people who say, oh, let's just send them a fruit basket at the end of the engagement. They'll remember us and it'll be great. Yeah, okay, whatever. But that doesn't fix anything if the actual engagement or the task that they had to complete is incredibly painful to do, right? So that would be my advice is if that emotional moment is a low, try to fix that before you start concentrating on, oh, well, we've got to, do something perfect at the end.
Because that's going to be very memorable. That's going to be very memorable to the customer. And that's what they're going to probably tell their friends and colleagues.
Exactly. Well, I mean, think about it. If you worked with a vendor and it was a nightmare and then they sent you a basket of fruit at the end, is that basket of fruit going to make up for the nightmare? No.
And if it's tomatoes in that basket, I'm throwing them at the vendor. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't exactly about digital marketing, but I did see this on your site and I was curious. You talk about using choice hacking to improve presentations, either webinars or in person. Can you just give us like a couple of your top tips on how we can do this to ultimately land a better presentation?
Yeah. Well, I do have a course on this if anybody's interested in it, where I go a little bit more deeper into the processes and everything. But one of the things that I found was incredibly helpful. There was an MIT professor. I'm going to forget his first name now. His last name is Winston. And every year at MIT, he would give this like sold out presentation about how to present complicated ideas. Now, this guy was an incredibly smart man. Like he ran, I think, MIT's AI lab for years and years. I mean, this is way before like AI became trendy. And his audience is people who are getting like PhDs at MIT who have to go teach or they have to present a paper at a conference. But what's interesting with that is he created a framework called Winston Star, which has these 5 like things that you have to communicate an idea succinctly, a complicated idea. And I started looking at it and I thought, this is, I mean, unsurprisingly, really brilliant, but there's a lot of psychology and behavioral science underlying why this is working so well. So Winston Star is a really good one to look at. And basically what he says is you need like a slogan. So one thing that people are going to walk away from your presentation with, just knowing. I think the example that I use one of the examples I use in the course is Simon Sinek. So I'm not a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I like start with why. Okay, sure. But his TED Talk, I think, is still the most viewed TED Talk of all time. And there's a reason for that. It's a great presentation. And the slogan of that presentation is start with why, which is also the name of his book. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? He's very brilliant at packaging up an idea. Whether you agree with that idea or not is a discussion for another podcast. But the idea of start with why, start with why. And you hear start with why, they start with why. Like, I think I went through and counted like 15 or 16 times in this, whatever it is, 5-minute TED Talk. So if you have that slogan and you're repeating it over and over, what do you think people are going to remember when they leave the presentation? Are they going to remember?
Start with why.
All the little details. Are they going to remember that chart that you showed? No, they're going to remember start with why, because you said it 100,000 times. Now, for people presenting numbers, think about how, you can use numbers and create a story and then create a slogan for that story. Is the story sales are down, or is the story whatever it might be, like our customers changing? Like whatever the story is, you have to think really carefully about it and then repeat it several times and give it enough room to breathe, right? So this is where behavioral science and things start to come in, because while I use remember that predictive AI tool where it takes a little heat map and it tells you like where are people paying attention, all this, you can use that on slide decks too. But if you don't have a predictive AI tool, you can just say, where are, I call them bus stop moments, which is not from Winston Starr, but is very helpful kind of metaphor, right? People fall off the bus all the time, no matter how fascinating you are. Like Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. I bet you $1 million, somebody in that audience was like, oh, what did he say? I wasn't paying attention. You know what I mean? Even in the greatest presentation ever of all time, people fall off the bus. You have to create moments where they get back on the bus. We know people will pay attention to something when it's the only thing on a slide. There's a lot of white space and there's one message. Now, what happens if there's a lot of white space and that one message is start with why? Oh, I'm back on the bus. I got it. Okay, we're talking about why. We're starting with why. Okay, I got it. I'm here for the rest of the story because I fell off the bus, but you gave me an opportunity to get back on the bus. So slogan is one of those. And there's, I think, 5 altogether, but there's an article on my site if anybody just wants to look it up. It's called Winston Starr, but he talks about simplicity, slogans, a symbol, having a visual representation of your idea. In the example from Simon Sinek, start with why, it's a target. I think he's got what, how, and then why is in the middle. I think he calls it the golden circle. I have to go back and look at my notes, but there's a name for it. Nobody remembers the name, but they remember the target as he draws it out on a piece of paper. And that visual symbol works. It sticks in our head because of something called picture superiority effect. It's sort of the scientific version of a picture says 1,000 words. But a picture, a symbol, is also much more memorable. It's easier to understand. It conveys meaning beyond words, and people remember it. So these elements of Winston Starr combined with just what we know about attention, like literal memory, how we need to frame actual stories, how we need to frame data, how we pay attention to stories and not just data points. And then I think also the types of language that we use, I get into quite a bit, but the idea of using concrete language when you can, I think is so important in a presentation. Also important in an agency landing page. People
Excellent.
Forget vague words, but if you are concrete, you're specific. If you're saying something like this Big Mac has a fluffy bun and it has a moist burger patty and I don't know, oily mayonnaise, like whatever language you want to use, you remember, you picture that Big Mac as opposed to this Big Mac tastes good. All right.
Right.
Well, no, that's not evocative. But the same thing applies to copywriting and presentations or on agency homepages.
Love it. Jen, this is great. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to learn more about choice hacking, if they want to pick up that course that you referenced, where can we send them online?
The best place to go is choicehacking.com. Because I found one good name and I'm bad at naming things, everything is choice hacking. And I am choice hacking everywhere you want to find me. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you look up choice hacking, you'll find me someplace. But the best place to start is just choicehacking.com.
Awesome. We'll have those links in the show notes. Jen, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Rich. I appreciate it.
Are you ready for some choice hacking? I'm guessing you are. If you missed any of the highlights that Jen shared with us, if you want to read through a whole transcript of the episode and you want to check out all of those links that Jen shared with us, just head on over to the website at theagentsofchange.com/530. And while you're there, make sure that you register for the Agents of Change Digital Marketing Summit. Again, coming April 24th through the 26th, 2024, 3 days, 30 experts, unlimited growth for you and your business. Free to attend the live showing. All you need to do is register. And if you are interested in really growing in 2024, make sure you sign up for one of those 2 VIP packages. You will not be disappointed. We've got more great content coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting platform, and I will talk to you soon, you agent of change.
Don't miss another thrilling episode of the Agents of Change podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform.